My first guest tonight, real thrilled to be speaking to a man. He has a new book coming out called The War Within. It's his fourth book on the Bush presidency. He's going to be appearing at the Palace Theater in Stamford on Wednesday evening. This is award-winning journalist Bob Woodward. Mr. Woodward, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
You've spent more time, I've seen it written, than any other reporter with President Bush. At this waning hour of his presidency, how does he think his legacy will be remembered? How does he feel his ventures have gone? Where is his head at, if you would?
Well, that's a great question. You never get a president on the couch, of course, and particularly one like Bush.
Sure.
But I found that over the 7 years plus that I've been interviewing him and doing these books, focusing on the Afghan and Iraq war, that it's taken its toll. He realizes that it's not gone perfectly, and when I asked, what are you going to say to Obama or McCain when they come in the Oval Office here in January as the next president, what are you going to say about the Iraq war? And he said, I will tell them, don't let it fail. Now that is a very much diminished expectation from the bluster and the talk of victory and transforming the Middle East into a hotbed of democracy.
Do they feel guarded when they see you coming? I mean, even last evening after the vice presidential debate, you hear pundits saying, oh, remember the mainstream media has this filter. Is there a certain hesitation when journalists enter the Bush White House?
Sure, but they know I'm going to give him his say and that I'm going to stick to the facts, though I might make a judgment, as I did in this case, which is quite tough-minded, and namely that for years he knew the war in Iraq was not going well, and he was saying things like, oh, we're winning, absolutely, we're winning, when he knew the opposite. And they're wary, but I think it's very much to his credit. He's willing to let somebody like myself, who is not a partisan one way or another, trying to present a neutral record of what happened, to let somebody like myself come in and interview him, really interrogate him for hours.
Let me ask you a couple of specific questions about the book. Again, it's called The War Within, and it's on bookshelves now. One bullet point that sticks out is 2006, Secretary Rumsfeld. There's a discussion among himself and Cheney and Bush that if the 2006 congressional elections go in favor of the Democrats, then he will resign. And it turns out that even Cheney was not aware of Bush asking for his resignation. Explain the dynamic there. I find that fascinating.
Well, what happened, it goes back to the beginning of the administration. They had somebody in mind to be defense secretary who didn't seem to be strong enough, so Cheney recommended Rumsfeld for the job. Now, Rumsfeld was Cheney's mentor in American politics, somebody who brought him to the Ford White House back in the 70s.
Right.
And that was such a big decision. Cheney was Rumsfeld's defender for years, and when Bush decided to get rid of Rumsfeld, he did not consult Cheney, and a day or two before the announcement, he said, I'm replacing Rumsfeld, and Cheney said, with whom? With Bob Gates. And Cheney said, well, I don't agree, but obviously it's your call, Mr. President.
Now, would that be unusual for President Bush to act in that fashion? Of course,
yes.
There's much reported that Mr. Cheney has a very big influence in the Oval Office.
Yeah, I think he did, and I think on the war, as I've written, he was a steamroller for it. But on this case, it wasn't working. The war was a catastrophe in 2006. So, as the president told me, he said, I realized we needed a new strategy. If you're going to have a new strategy, you need new personnel.
Let's talk briefly about Mr. Maliki in Iraq. There's a section of your book where you mention that high-level officials have said that we know everything he does, everything he says. Do you think that is, in fact, the case, and is that a bad thing?
Well, what I found is that we're spying on him. And he's one of our closest allies, somebody the president says he supports and trusts.
Well, that seems like a strong word, spying on.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's exactly what happens.
Right.
How you find out somebody is doing certain things. what I found, a lot of people felt it didn't really help Bush that much. And when you spy on somebody, you get all of this stuff about what they're doing and saying, and you focus on them rather than on yourself. And what we needed to do is figure out what we were going to do and not what Maliki was going to do. And it's in part, I think, why there was such a delay in coming up with a new strategy in '06.
Had there been... and again, I don't want to take sides here, but had there been what everyone could agree on was a greater success more quickly in Iraq, do you think the Bush administration's plan was then to go into other countries in the region? Was there, I guess, what would have been the best outcome as far as they were concerned?
I mean, if they'd knocked Iraq off real quickly and stabilized and was a democracy,
was the focus always to rebuild there, or was there more coming that hasn't come to pass because of the loss of political wherewithal?
Well, it's not only political wherewithal. The Iraq War stressed the army and the whole military,
right,
in a very big way. I don't know the answer to that. What I'm able to do in this book, in the books, and as I talk about Bush and the White House, is tell you what did happen, and because it's hidden. We have secret government. They classify most things, and you don't know. And almost everything in this book is new, because I was able to penetrate the classification. And so you see the positions that are taken, what the intelligence reports say, the Cheney position, the Pentagon position, the State Department position, and you go to the meetings through the book to see exactly what's said. And so my focus is on what did happen, not if history.
We're speaking here with Bob Woodward. Of course, when your name comes up, people immediately hearken back to your remarkable work during the Nixon administration. You must see a parallel to some degree in the paranoia atmosphere almost that the media, the forces against them, and they're trying to protect themselves. Do you see that same sort of wall? Is that a fair parallel?
Well, sometimes there is, and there's too much secrecy and too much not answering questions, but I'm hardly one to complain. I think I interviewed Bush for 11 hours in a series of interviews for these 4 books, or 3 of them he talked to me for. And so he may not like it, and it may be like a proctoscopic exam, but he did it, and I give him credit for that. But they don't like the media. I mean, no one likes the media. If you had Bill Clinton, written books on him, and
right.
Talk about his administration also, but if you had Bill Clinton on sodium pentothal, truth serum, and you asked him, how much did the media treat you fairly and how unfairly, he would say he was the most abused president by the media of all of them.
I think he may say that about his wife's campaign this year, too.
Yeah,
also.
That's right. So no one loves us, and we better, that doesn't mean we should change what we do, but we've got to get, there's this arrogance and self-satisfaction too often in what we do or what we predict, and we are only reporters. I think it's the spy novelist John le Carré who said, no one from the outskirts or the sidelines ever really won a war or did anything of much use. And that may be a little cynical, but I think a little humility on our part would be in order.
Is there a 5th book coming on the Bush White House before we wrap up?
There is not. My wife says if I do that, she will shoot me.
Well, he'll be speaking about his 4 previous books, including the one again on shelves now, The War Within, this upcoming Wednesday evening in Stamford. Bob Woodward, a pleasure to speak with you, and I'd love to chat with you again after we find out who's going to be taking that big chair in January.
Thanks so much.
Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye.